Welcome to Beach House 34. Before we jump into today's testimony, here's a really quick recap of episode 3. If you haven't heard that one yet, I'll link to it above if you're watching this on YouTube, and I'll also add it to the show's description. Now, as a reminder, Patreon members get early access to all of these recordings for a mere $5 a month, and they get this access a week before the general public. Visit patreon.com/beachhouse34. In the last episode, we heard from Teresa Halbach's younger brother, Mike. His testimony was heartbreaking, and that had to be incredibly hard for him. He talked about Teresa, how close they were, her love of photography, and the kind of person that she was: smart, independent, really connected to her family. He also walked us through those early days after she went missing, the phone calls, the posters, the searches, and that moment when her vehicle was found, but she wasn't. The prosecutor, Kratz, his questioning felt disorganized. He stumbled over exhibits, he repeated himself, and he came off like he was more focused on something else rather than the actual testimony. For the prosecution's first witness, that's not exactly confidence inspiring. Then Steven's attorney, one of his attorneys, Dean Strang, stepped in. He didn't keep Michael on the stand too long, but he accomplished what he wanted to. He showed that Teresa was strong. She was sharp. She was very capable, which challenged the idea that she could be so easily overpowered without a trace. It was subtle, but very, very intentional. And real quick, if this kind of thing, these trials are your kind of deep dive, your kind of thing, you should really check out the Darlie Routier trial that I've already covered. This is another case with serious flaws in the investigation. If you want to hear about a mother accused of killing her own kids and all the ways that the state might have gotten it wrong, it's worth your time. That's available wherever you're listening right now. I will have the link in the description, and if you're watching on YouTube, I'll have a link at the top of the page. Today, we're going to hear from Thomas Pearce, a photographer who shared a studio with Teresa, and then we're going to hear from David Beach. This is Teresa's cousin who was involved in the search and spoke to Steven Avery. So, all right, let's get back to the Avery trial. Thomas Pearce takes the stand, and the clerk says, "Raise your right hand, please." And then says, "Thomas Pearce, called as a witness herein, having been first duly sworn, was examined and testified as follows." The clerk says, "Please be seated." The court says, "You may proceed, Mr. Kratz." The clerk then says, "Please state your name and spell your last name for the record." And the witness says, "Thomas Pearce, Pearce." The direct examination is begun by attorney Kratz. "Mr. Pearce, how are you employed?" "I'm sorry? How are you employed?" "I'm self-employed." "Can you tell the jury in what capacity?" "I'm a professional photographer. I have my own studio." "Did you know a young woman by the name of Teresa Halbach?" "Oh, yes, I did." "Can you tell the jury how you first became knowledgeable about Miss Halbach?" "It was in January of 2002 through an internship program through the university. She approached me to do an internship through the university, and I took her on as an intern. And from there on, throughout the internship program, which ends when she graduates, I saw that she was an exceptional person in photography, and for her age, that I asked her to stay on and work through my studio or with me doing weddings and portraits." "What university was this?" "University of Green Bay." "I think you mentioned that you had seen something in her that actually made you offer her a job. Can you tell us what that was?" "Well, in this field, you see, and I have worked with other interns, and some of them do have the drive, the passion, the want, and knowing that, being a photographer, a lot of people think it's very easy. It's a lot of hours. It's a lot of dedicated work. And she had that, and I haven't seen that in many people in a lot of years. And I was impressed with that. She knew the responsibility, the sacrifices it took, and she was eager to learn. She was consistently asking questions and from doing different projects and so on. So I was very impressed with her. And that's why I asked her to stay on. Was she technically good at what she did? Yes. The university, I also went to school, but not here in Green Bay. They teach you the book. And how should I say, you should know the rules before you know how to break them. And that's why I think the internship program is a good program because it has, in many different fields, people come out and see what it's really like in everyday life and not so much how the book says it. But you have got to know the book, but you have to break the rules when you are out there. After offering Teresa a job or employment through your studio, how long did that last? And did that evolve into some other business relationship? As far as working for me, or I should say, really with me, she was a go getter. Like I said, she had that passion. And I looked, and when you are a staff photographer for someone, you have got to abide by their ways of doing things, their policies, because you are working for them. So you have to do stuff their way. Well, I didn't want to hold her back because she was incredibly involved and had that passion for this. So on the other hand, I didn't want to not lose her, but have her go out and go, hit and miss, which a lot of young photographers do. I had a full studio, plenty of room for both of us. So we sat down and we talked and we did something that no one has done before. She started her own business, not be in competition, but complementing each other. So she worked out of my studio. She used all the facilities of the studio, but she ran her own business through my studio. Meanwhile, we cooperated in doing advertising together, promotions, learning, helping one another. I would book weddings for her. She would book for me. There was never any competition between us. And it was something unusual, but it worked out very well for both of us. Just for the record, this guy is really hard to read. It just doesn't flow very well. All right, let's get back to it. Did she call upon you for advice? Many times, yes. And it was basically not only the technical end of it, the photography end of it, but on how to run a business, what is needed behind the scenes. And that's where in this business, a lot of the people that get into the photography business, they know photography, but they don't know the business end of it. So yes, I did mentor her in a lot of different areas. 38 years of experience, and I wanted to share that with her because I could see that she was basically like me when I came out of college. School. I was eager. I had the passion. We had a lot of similarities. I graduated with a degree in photography. I also worked the photo school newspaper, and she did. And I worked at many different studios before I moved up here in the Green Bay market. So we had that same background. And I think it's a duty for any of us to share what we have learned, our experiences with someone up and coming. I think, Mr. Pearce, you talked about weddings and portraits and the like. That was, or by the fall of 2005, had Teresa been developing a particular niche within the photography business? Attorney Strang, the attorney for Steven Avery, says, Your Honor, I wonder if we could approach the sidebar for a moment. And the court says, sure. And at this point, a sidebar is taken. This is not included in the trial transcripts. And then the questioning begins again by Attorney Kratz. Mr. Pearce, could you discuss whether or not Teresa had developed a particular niche within the photography business? I think if there was any one area, it was children. She loved to photograph children of all ages. She had a knack for that. But as far as a niche, I mean, that would be her certain niche. But she was well versed at doing weddings and good at doing weddings and portraits and family. But her love was doing children from all ages of children. Now, as a part of that business, as part of Teresa's photography business, were you aware of a particular client that she serviced, which was Auto Trader magazine? There was a time when she had told me about that she had picked up a client, which was Auto Trader, and she would be running around taking pictures of cars. Yes, I was aware of that. All right. And had she ever asked your opinion or advice about working for Auto Trader or that kind of photography? I don't think she asked my advice, but I think I may have suggested something to her. Her photography business was picking up for studio-wise a lot. And it seemed when she first started with Auto Trader, was just on Mondays. Mondays were typically closed in the industry because we worked a lot of Saturdays. So it seemed all of a sudden that she not only had to do Auto Trader on Monday, but possibly Wednesdays and some Saturdays. She was constantly telling me that she was running doing Auto Trader, and I could see that she was starting to burn the candle at both ends. And at one time, I sat her down and I said, "Gee, you are running here, you're running here, you're running." And I didn't want her to get to a burnout point. So I just asked her, "How is Auto Trader? Is it a good client? Blah, blah, blah." We never talked on how much she was making or whatever. That was never discussed. I mean, that was where we drew the line in our business end of it, but I was more concerned about her well-being of running, of the constant running. She was constantly running, and that's what she enjoyed. So that was the only time I really had any discussion with her about Auto Trader. Let me ask you this, Mr. Pearce. Are you familiar with the defendant, Steven Avery? As far as familiar with him, as far as what? Have you heard the name before the 31st of October? Just one time, and I think it was the spring, late spring or early summer. Teresa had mentioned to me, she said kind of matter-of-factly, "You will never guess whose cars I was taking pictures of." And she told me the name and it didn't ring a bell. She actually had to remind me or say, "Oh, that was the guy that was wrongfully convicted," and so on and so forth. And we had a little discussion, and then I remembered the case and so on and so. We talked about a little bit about her being out and about, running around all over the county by herself and her safety and so on and so forth. And that was basically it. That was the only time she ever mentioned it to me. All right. We have learned that Teresa Halbach drove a 1999 Toyota RAV4 SUV. Pictures in front of you. Would you look on the back? What exhibit number is that? 05CF381, Exhibit 5. All right. Have you ever seen that vehicle before? Oh, sure. She was working with me when she purchased it. Actually, I took that picture, and she was happy as a lark to have her first car. She used to have a beater that was an older car, not a beater, and now this allowed her freedom to go. Yeah, she was very happy with that car. Turning now to a more serious series of topics, Mr. Pierce. Sometime after the 31st of October, after that Monday, after the Halloween, did you see Teresa the next day at work, Tuesday, the 1st of November? No, like I said earlier, Mondays we were closed. Actually, the last time I saw Teresa was Saturday before the 31st. When Tuesday came, she had her own hours because she had her own business. Since I'm there like 60 hours a week, she may have been there one week 20 hours, all depended on her schedule and so on. But she always kept me informed of, was she going to be gone for a day? Did she have appointments? Was she going to take off for a weekend, etc.? She was very responsible in that sense, extremely responsible for a young person. Well, Tuesday came and by noon she wasn't there. I didn't think too much. Oh, okay. I know she was there Saturday working, did Auto Trader. So I'm going through my mind, well, what? I knew Wednesday because every Wednesday morning, she actually was one of the founders of a BMG group, BMG marketing group, business marketing group that meets once a week. Business leaders, they go over leads and what's going on in Green Bay and so on. She was one of the founders and very active in it. She usually would come in, about sometimes 11 o'clock, 11:30 on that Wednesday religiously because she would be in town for that meeting. So Wednesday around noon, she didn't show up. I thought, okay, this is a little strange. I tried calling her and I got her cell phone, but her phone book, and it was full, where I couldn't even leave a message. Her voicemail? Her voicemail box. That's it. Yes, it was full. I couldn't even leave a message. I thought this was a little strange because typically you get right through to her. She was very good at returning calls, very good at leaving messages and letting me know. So kind of, well, maybe she's sick, with the flu season, covered up under the covers, turn the cell phone off, just go and doing that. Sure. So I thought, well, for sure, she'll be in Thursday. And I had called a couple times her cell phone. So by Thursday, now I haven't heard from her. This is Thursday, the 3rd of November. Right. Yes. Okay. What did you do then? I tried to call her again. Same thing with the phone. Now, some of her work was coming in, being shipped in to be processed. And I knew that she knew she kept track of that. So if she was out of town or sick, I think she would have called me by this time. And I started getting really, really worried. I didn't know who to call, her friends, etc. So I think was around 1 o'clock, somewhere in that time period. I called Karen, Teresa's mother, seeing if she knew. That was the only phone number I had other than Teresa's. I didn't have any of her friends and talked to Karen about it. And she was going to call some of her friends, or she already had. And the next thing I know, it was 10 o'clock on the news. I heard it was officially that Teresa was missing. Perhaps you can help us, Mr. Pearce. Are you familiar with use of digital cameras, digital film, and how a digital camera can imprint or create an electronic signature on photos that are taken therefrom? I'm not a real good expert on digital, but I know some of what the digital cameras do. If that's what I'm going to direct you to some images. And when you take the cursor for a computer over a digital image, as an example, this image gives the dimensions, gives the date the picture taken is 10/10/05 at 3:18 p.m. Camera model, it indicates Canon PowerShot A310 to JPEG image and the size of that. Are you familiar with the taking or production of digital photography, that those kinds of details are provided right in the image itself? Do you understand the question? Yes, yes, sir. Absolutely true. They are. Unless you get a $10 or $15 or $20 digital camera, the nicer cameras, even the smaller ones, will do that automatically in their programming for that. All right. Same question I have asked another witness, and I will ask you, Mr. Pierce. After the, really, after the 29th of October, 2005, had you ever heard or spoken to Teresa Halbach? No. Attorney Kratz then says, "That's all I have for this witness, Judge. Thank you." The court then says, "Mr. Strang." And the cross-examination by Stephen's attorney begins. Mr. Pierce, the Teresa Halbach you knew was someone you described once as feisty? Well, depends on how you mean feisty. How did you mean it? Full of energy. Someone who was in good shape and could fight back? I would think so. She carried a cell phone regularly? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. She carried a cell phone regularly? As far as I know, yes, that was her lifeline. But that wasn't something she would hook on a belt or do one of those things. She would keep it in her purse? Well, most of the time when I would see her, she would have it out of her purse and on the counter. If she were out somewhere, though, the cell phone was always in her purse, I think you have said before. I couldn't answer that 100%. I would think so. She was in her car. Maybe it would be on the driver's seat. I know it went with her wherever she went. And when she was at Pierce Photography, she frequently would leave the cell phone out on the counter. If she was out somewhere else, it was in her purse, typically. That was your experience with her? Well, I know when she was at work, it was always out in the open on the counter, just like this picture sitting here, because that was her business line. When she was out of the studio, I really don't know what she did with her cell phone. I'm going to show you a report of an interview that you had with an agent named Alan Hunsater. Do you remember talking with him? Sure. I'm going to offer it as an exhibit. I'm just hoping it might refresh your recollection about the cell phone. I invite you to look at the last paragraph on that page, just to yourself. Yeah, I guess. Does that help? Yeah. Refresh your recollection about your experience with Teresa Halbach and her cell phone? When we would shoot a wedding together, she would have her cell phone in her purse. Through her, when when we would go to give an example, we did a lot of work in a park, which was 5 minutes away from us doing weddings. Even in her training time, she would keep her cell phone in her purse. That was my oversight. You described it as her lifeline just a few minutes ago, right? Was that the only number you had for her? Yes. You don't know whether she had a landline phone in her home? I don't think so. You were aware that she evidently shared her cell phone number with Auto Trader customers. I knew at one time she said to me that she was able to give out her business cards to the Auto Trader. So in that respect, I guess, yeah, because her cell phone number would be on that. And indeed, there was. There were at least a few occasions on which you were aware that she was getting calls on her cell phone from customers or dissatisfied customers of Auto Trader, and she would refer those to the Auto Trader office. She mentioned to me a couple of times that people were calling her direct. They had a problem with Auto Trader or whatever the case may be. She said, "Don't bother me, call the Auto Trader office." Yes, sir. What what day was it, as best as you can recall? And I'm going to chase the time to, if you can, that you first called Teresa's cell phone the week of October 31st and found the voicemail box full. I think it would have been Tuesday afternoon, and that somewhere in that time period. And the voicemail box was full? Yes. Okay. And then Wednesday, before this marketing group luncheon, after she didn't show up, did you try that again? Yes, sir. Still full voicemail box? Still full. And if I understand you correctly, you said you tried again Thursday. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. So full voicemail box Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday? I believe I'm almost positive all three times because I thought that was very unusual. Starting Tuesday mid-afternoon. Yes, sir. This studio, it was your studio, but she was sharing space. If I understood you, yes. Correctly? Yes. Keys to the studio. One, more than one? She had a set of keys. Yes, sir. What is a set of keys, meaning to the studio? Well, as myself, we always carry two so that, I mean, it's the same key, but in case we drop it. And Teresa had a funny thing about not losing her keys, but misplacing her keys all the time. So I gave her two, one to put on her keychain and one to put in her purse somewhere. So she always has it. So two keys. If she mislaid the keychain? Yes. Okay. So the office key was one of the keys on that keychain? I would think so. Is it a keychain you saw? I'm sorry? Is it a keychain that you ever saw? Laying on the counter or something? Yes. Okay. It had a number of keys on it? I would think maybe three or four. Okay. About 3 weeks before she disappeared, Teresa Halbach, you were aware, had been getting a lot of telephone calls that she was not answering on the cell phone? Yes, sir. They would leave no message? If you are referring to the same thing, I think she was standing almost right next to me in a day, and she got this phone call, and she looked at it and said, "Oh, not them again," or "not him again," and just kind of forgot about it. She looked a little upset, so I questioned her a little bit about this, and she told me, "Just forget about it. Somebody keeps calling her all different hours, a nuisance call." And that was about 2 or 3 weeks, and she had mentioned that she had been getting them for a while. And I had said, "Well, why don't you give me the number and I will call and find out instead of her dealing with it?" And she said, "No, don't worry about it." But that's, I think, what you're talking about. Right. And whatever the number was that came up on the phone, she recognized it. Yeah, she knew what it was, but she wouldn't let me know. Attorney Strang then says, "Thank you." The court says, "Any other questions, Mr. Kratz?" And Attorney Kratz says, "Just one area of inquiry of Mr. Pearce." And then the redirect begins. Mr. Pearce, would you have considered yourself as long or together with a mentor being a friend of Teresa's? A good friend and a good colleague, yes. In that regard, had you ever admonished or warned Teresa about her behavior if she was alone with somebody in a home? Attorney Strang says, "Relevance?" The court says, "Mr. Kratz?" Attorney Kratz then says, "Judge, it actually will be relevant to the false imprisonment charge, the issue of being restrained or confined. If admonished by an individual that shouldn't occur, it goes to that particular element of that offense." The court says, "Mr. Strang?" And Attorney Strang says, "I don't know that we ought to be arguing the point here. I'm not at all convinced of the relevance." The court then says, "I don't know about the relevance, but I think it's beyond the scope of redirect. I'm going to sustain the objection. Attorney Strang then says, we can't hear the court. The court says, it's beyond the scope of redirect. I'm sustaining the objection. Attorney Kratz then says, that's all I have, Mr. Pearce then. Judge, thank you. The court then says, you're excused. And Attorney Kratz says, could we approach just briefly, Judge? And the court says, sure. At this point, a sidebar is taken. And again, this is not within the trial transcripts. The court then says, for the benefit of the jurors, I informed counsel that I really didn't want to go beyond 4:30 today. I'm aware of the fact that you have not only been sitting in the jury box most of the day, but also the fact that there's travel to and from Manitowoc each day. So unless it is really important, I'm going to do my best to get you out of here at 4:30 all the time. But I have been told that there is a witness who isn't going to take very long. So, Mr. Kratz, you may call your witness. I hope this guy's better than the last guy. Once again, I have never read any of these. This is the first time I'm reading through these. Attorney Kratz then says, thank you, Judge. We call David Beach to the stand. And at this point, David Beach takes the stand. He is sworn as a witness, spells his last name and so forth. And then the court says, Mr. Beach, I'm going to ask you to get a little closer to the microphone. The direct examination then begins by Attorney Kratz. Mr. Beach, do you know a woman by the name of Teresa Halbach? Yes, I did. How did you know her? She was my cousin. Sometime on Friday, the 4th of November, did you volunteer to assist in a search for Teresa? Yes. And in that regard, were you with somebody else or paired up with somebody in that search? I was paired with my older sister, Sarah Beach. On Friday, the 4th of November, did you make any stops or what did your search efforts entail? I met up with my sister and our search effort was to look for her vehicle. So we got some information from the Halbachs about what her schedule was, where she had the area that she was going to, and we just tried to track down the Toyota. All right. In that effort, Mr. Beach, did you find your way to the Avery salvage yard property? Yes. And could you tell the jury, please, what occurred once you got to that property? We came to the property. I was the passenger in the vehicle. I stepped out. I went into the garage. There was a lone desk. There was a person sitting at the desk talking on the phone. Another person came to the desk to greet me. And then at that time point, I asked the person if they ever had any photographers come to the salvage yard to take pictures of vehicles. And he said he didn't know. And then I came back and I mentioned that my cousin was missing. She was a photographer. And that was the reason for my visit. All right. Let me ask you, Mr. Beach, do you know the defendant, Steven Avery, the gentleman seated in the courtroom today? At the time, I did not. Today, I do. When you got to the salvage yard on the 4th of November, that Friday, was Steven Avery one of the people that you talked to at the office or in what you call the garage? Yes, he was the second person. Did you specifically ask Mr. Avery whether or not your cousin Teresa had been to the salvage yard? Yes. What did Mr. Avery tell you? He said that she was there roughly about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. All right. Just back up just a second. Mr. Avery himself told you that Teresa was there that day or the day that she had come to take pictures? Yes. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, right? Yes. This would have been 3 days after her appearance there. Is that right? Yes, this was a Friday. Okay. Mr. Avery give you any more details about what Teresa had done while at the property? He told me that she was there. There was a vehicle behind the office garage, and she was taken to the vehicle to be photographed. That was her purpose for being there. Let me ask you, Mr. Beach, upon your stopping at this auto trader, at the Avery salvage lot, did you provide any information or any literature to either Mr. Avery himself or to the Avery salvage business? No, I did not. How long was it that you discussed your cousin with Mr. Avery? 5 minutes. Finally, Mr. Beach, did Mr. Avery know who you were talking about? In other words, did he indicate whether or not this woman had been there before? Yes, I described her build, what she looked like, what she drove, and he confirmed all that. And he confirmed that she was there to take photographs. Had she been there before? Had she been there before? Did he tell you? Yes. What did he say, if you can remember? In my line of questioning about my cousin, she was missing. He said that, yes, Teresa Halbach came there on a regular basis. So that the jury is clear, Mr. Beach, after that 5 minute, that brief contact with Mr. Avery, did you return to the Avery salvage property or did you have any other conversation with Mr. Avery? No. Attorney Kratz then says, that's all I have of this witness, then, Judge? The court says Mr. Buting, and Mr. Buting is another attorney for Steven Avery. Thank you, Judge. And the cross-examination begins. Now, Mr. Beach, do you know what time it was that you came to see Mr. Avery at the Avery salvage yard? About 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon? Yes. And by that time, of course, there had been reports about your sister in the media, right? I'm sorry, your cousin, with the media about her being missing and all of that? I do not know. I did not hear that. So you didn't see any of the news report about your cousin? Correct. Okay. So how was it that you ended up at the Avery salvage lot? Friday morning, I received a phone call from my parents. They told me about my cousin, Teresa, was missing. Later that afternoon, I came up, I met with my sister. We then got information from the Halbachs. After that, we just drove around and we started from Mishicot and we worked our way north. Okay. My question, I guess, is, did somebody give you information about what her appointments were that day? The Halbachs told me the general area she had work in, but they did not give me any idea of where her stops were. So no one told you that she had an appointment on Monday the 31st at the Avery salvage lot yard? Correct. You just stumbled on that? Yeah, by incident. It was incidental. Okay. And when you got there, Steven Avery, the person sitting to my left, who you now know, came up and seemed concerned about what you were asking about, right? Yes. Seemed calm. Correct. Did not appear to be holding anything back? No. Correct? Correct. In fact, I think you described him as being very forthright, didn't you? Correct. Expressing genuine concern about, what happened to your cousin. Attorney Kratz then says, objection, judge, calls for speculation how genuine it may be. The court then says, well, he can testify as to his impression. The witness then continues. He said that he was concerned. And then Attorney Buting continues. Okay, and you accepted that? Yes. And he told you described his vehicle. I'm sorry, you described her vehicle, the RAV4? Yes. And he said, yes, I do recall she was driving that and he actually said she came sometime mid-afternoon, didn't he? Yes, he said that she was at his garage, salvage yard, around 2 o'clock. But he qualified that by saying approximately mid-afternoon? Correct. Okay. Wasn't exact on the time? Correct. And he said that she did take photo of the vehicle, right? Correct. And that he did not know her next stop, right? Yes. And he told you that when the RAV4 pulled out of the driveway, that it went to the left from the Avery property. Correct. Attorney Buting then says, all right, I have no further questions. And the witness then says, thank you. The court says, anything else? Very well, you are excused. Members of the jury, that's going to conclude the court proceedings for today. I will remind you again not to discuss this case with anyone before we resume tomorrow. And we'll see you tomorrow morning. And at this point, the jury is not present, but everybody else is. The court then says, counsel, I would just ask that tomorrow morning the attorneys meet in chambers at 8:20 before the day begins, just to let me know what's coming. Attorney Buting says, "What time did you say the jury is coming? 8:45?" The court says, "Okay, meet at 8:30. We'll find out from experience what time they normally get here. I believe you are right. Meet at 8:30." And then Attorney Fallon, who is part of the prosecution team, says, "Excuse me, Judge, did you want to take up that other matter today or tomorrow morning?" The court says, "I have a number of other matters listed. I'm not sure which one you want, but we'll discuss that tomorrow morning." And Attorney Fallon then says, "All right." And at that point, proceedings are concluded. All right, that wraps up today's episode. So, what did we just hear? Well, we heard from Thomas Pearce, Teresa's former mentor and business partner. He described her as driven, passionate, and responsible, someone who knew what she wanted and wasn't afraid to go after it. But he also mentioned that she'd been getting repeated phone calls before she disappeared, calls that, she didn't want to talk to him about, she didn't want to discuss. And that's a bit creepy. I wonder who that might have been. Then we heard from Teresa's cousin, David Beach. He was out searching for her when he went to the Avery salvage yard. He actually spoke to Steven Avery directly. And Avery told him that Teresa had been there that day around, he said, 2 o'clock to photograph a car. That's the prosecution's position, that she was there. Avery admits it, and she evidently never left. But the defense pointed out something different. Avery didn't give a firm time. He said, she was there around mid-afternoon, not 2 o'clock sharp. They also emphasized how Stephen seemed very calm and cooperative, even concerned. That's not how someone usually acts if they've just committed a violent crime, right? So we've got both sides starting to build their case, the state leaning on access and opportunity, and the defense setting up the idea that Avery's behavior doesn't match what you'd expect from someone who's guilty. So next up, we are going to hear from Angela Schuster, Teresa's boss at Auto Trader, and Dawn Pliska, who actually booked the appointment with Avery, two people who can help clarify what Teresa's workday looked like and whether anything about it maybe felt off. If you want to dig deeper, check out foulplay.site. I will have the link for you in the show notes or the description. It's got a ton of documents. It's got filings and materials from this case, including a lot of what I'm reading from here, the transcripts. And one more thing before I go. Some of the evidence photos get graphic. So on YouTube, I'll be blurring those out to stay within their guidelines. But if you want the unedited version, they're available on Patreon for members only. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you in the next one.